Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another season preview video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New Jersey Devils. Both these teams missed the playoffs last year. We're going to look at how they did last year. We're going to look at their offseason and how they did. And we're going to preview this upcoming season for both these teams. We'll get to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the video here at the Nintendo Hockey channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to with you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can also discuss in this video. Now we're going to continue on with our season preview series, and this time we're looking at two Metro Division teams in the Devils and the Penguins. Now first we're going to look back at the season that they both had this past year. If you look at the New Jersey Devils this past year, they had a 38, 39, and 5 record for 81 points. That was 7th in the Metro Division, 13th in the Eastern Conference, and 23rd in the NHL. So it was a really bad season there for the Devils, finishing below 500 after making the playoffs the year prior. Put up 264 goals for, which was 14th in the NHL, so it was around league average. But they had 283 goals against, which was 27th in the NHL. So they had a decently offensive team, and not one of the better ones, but they did have a really average offensive team. But their defense and their goaltending was awful, and a major reason as to why this team was not a playoff team this past year. If you look at their leading point players, that was Jesper Bratt, who had led the team with 83 points, followed by Jack Hughes, who had 74, and Nico Hischier, who had 67. So interesting stuff there for the Devils, but some interesting point scores there for New Jersey. If you look at the goal scorers, Meyer led the team with 28 goals. Meanwhile, Bratt, Hughes, and Hischier all had 27 goals and were one behind Meyer for the team lead. So interesting stuff there, but those are some interesting goal scorers there from the Devils. And their rookie leader was none other than one of the Calder Trophy finalists, and that was Luke Hughes, who had 9 goals and 38 assists, 47 points for the Devils in his rookie season. So he looks fantastic, brother of Jack Hughes. So pretty good pickups there for the Devils. But this past year they had a lot of really good players who had a lot of really good seasons, but wasn't able to contribute themselves to making the playoffs. So interesting stuff there, as they did wind up missing the playoffs. Going over to their additions and losses and some of the other things that Devils did this offseason. I feel like their additions, they brought back Max Willman, Nick DeSimone, Curtis McDermott, Shane Bowers, Santeri Hataka, and Nico Dawes. Some of them RFAs, some of them UFAs, most of them getting league minimum deals. They also bring in Mike Hardman, who's a bottom 6 forward from Chicago. Bring in Tomas Tatar from Seattle. I think it was a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, like $1.18 million. They bring in Stefan Noesen on a 3-year deal with AV of $2.65 million from Carolina. Also bring in Brett Pesce from Carolina, as they get him on, I think it was a 6-year deal, AV of $5.6 million or something like that. And then they get Brendan Dillon from Winnipeg on a 3-year deal with AV of $4 million. So interesting stuff there. If you look at their losses, and it's not a whole bunch that they lost this offseason. They lose Chris Tierney, who's UFA. They lose Brendan Smith, who went and signed with Dallas. They lose Tomas Nosek, who went to Florida. They lose Eric Källgren, who's still UFA. They lose Kaapo Kähkönen, who went to Winnipeg. They lose Michael McLeod, who went to the KHL. And they lose Cal Foote, who went to a UFA. And McLeod and Foote are part of that 2018 World Junior team that were never coming back. So interesting stuff there. If you look at the team's trades this past year that didn't involve just pick-for-pick swaps, they actually made quite a bit of trades this offseason. They first traded Kevin Ball and 2025 top 10 protected first-round pick to the Calgary Flames in exchange for Markstrom with some money retained. So they got him at a $4.125 million cap hit. They then traded Graham Clark to the Minnesota Wild for Adam Beckman. Both guys wind up signing new deals. They then traded John Marino and 2024 5th-round pick, number 153rd overall, to Utah in exchange for a 2024 2nd-round pick, which was number 49 overall, and 2025 2nd-round pick, which was Edmonton's pick for next year. So interesting stuff there. They also then traded Alex Holtz and Akira Schmid to the Golden Knights in exchange for Paul Cotter and a 2025 3rd-rounder, and they traded a 2026 4th-rounder, which was New Jersey's, to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Jonathan Kovacevic. So all in all, not a bad additions there. I mean, they add a 2nd-round pick for next year, a 3rd-round pick for next year. They add Markstrom, Beckman, Cotter, Kovacevic, a 2nd-round pick for this past year's draft. Move on from guys like Ball, Clark, Marino, Holtz, Schmid, as well as a couple of draft picks. So interesting stuff there. Like, I think they won the Markstrom deal. I think they probably did win the Marino deal as well. They probably won the Kovacevic deal. They made an interesting swap with Beckman. I'm not sure if they definitely won the Cotter deal, but they definitely made made an interesting move there. So the Devils definitely did have some interesting trades this offseason. If you look at their top 3 picks in this past year's draft, the first round, 10th overall, they took Anton Salayev, who's a left-shot defenseman, should eventually be a solid top 4, maybe even top pair defenseman for the Devils. They got Mikhail Yegorov, who's a goaltender, second round, 49th overall, so a pretty good pickup there. Should be eventually a solid, maybe even backup goaltender for the Devils. And then they also got Kasperi Pikkarainen, who's a right winger, was taken in the third round, 85th overall. I think he's definitely another guy who's very likely to wind up eventually being a solid, maybe third line forward there for the Devils, so pretty good pickups there in the draft. If we go over to the 2 biggest questions this team is facing entering training camp, one has to be the Mercer contract. Austin Mercer, at this point in time, at the recording of this video, has not signed yet. I think he'll probably get something like a 3 to 4 year deal with AV of like $5.5 million. So I think there's a very likely chance that Mercer will get signed, but that's a big question mark right now with him not being signed. And another big question for this team has to be, can they stay healthy? Will this team be able to wind up staying healthy? I mean, last year they had a lot of injuries, especially early on, that really derailed their team and their season last year. Can they stay healthy enough to be a really good, strong team this year? I think it's a possibility. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to my projected lineup as well as my predictions for the Devils for this upcoming season. If you look at my projected lineup for the Devils for this upcoming season, I have Andre Palat playing on the top line with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. On the second line, I have Dawson Mercer, as soon as he signed, playing with Nico Hischier and Timo Meier. I have on the third line Tatar playing with Haula and Nosen. And on the fourth line, I have Bastian playing with Lazar and McDermott. So I have a decent forward group there. I have on the defensive end Siegenthaler playing with Hamilton, Luke Hughes playing with Brett Pesce, and Brendan Dillon playing with Simone Nemec. So lots of interesting stuff there for those defensive pairings. I have Markstrom being the starter, Allen being the backup, and I have Carter and Kovacevic being the 2 spares. So a 22-man roster is probably going to be cap compliant in my opinion, so it's a pretty good pickup there for the New Jersey Devils, as that's my projected lineup for this team for this upcoming season. Meanwhile, if you look at my projected point total for the Devils for this upcoming season, I know they projected them to do this last year, they never wound up doing it, but I'm going to do it again. I have the Devils wind up winning the President's Trophy. I have them finishing with 116 points for top spot in the NHL. Now I have them beating last year's record by 35 points. That might be a little bit too extreme, and it may only be like a third or second place team in the Metro instead of winning it and the league. But I think this Devils team is poised for a huge season after their off-season moves, and I think this team is really close to being a really good cup contender. So in my opinion, I think there's a very likely chance that they will be a lot higher than some people think, and in my opinion, I have them making the President's Trophy winning team. So interesting stuff there. 3 ways I can see the Devils improve to get better for next year. 1, better goaltending. Last year, Vanacek and Schmid did not cut it. Dawes came up. He did a little bit better than Schmid, but once again did not cut it. That Devils goaltending was atrocious last year. I think if they are able to get some better goaltending this year, which they should with a Markstrom Allen tandem, they should be a lot better. But I think better goaltending is a major must, in my opinion, for Devils to make the playoffs. Staying healthy. Last year, Hughes and Hischier both missed time early on in the season due to injuries. Hamilton missed a majority of the season last year due to injuries, and there were a lot of other players who did suffer injuries last year too. If they're able to stay relatively healthy, this team should be lethal. So I think staying healthy is going to be a major part of making the playoffs for the Devils. And third would be more experienced defense. Last year, they had a really young blue line. With Hamilton out, they had a lot of really young defenders, especially guys like Nemec and Hughes were in the first year of their careers. This year, Nemec and Hughes now have a year of experience. They bring in some more older veterans like Dillon, like Pesce. Hamilton's healthy, so they should have a little more of an experienced blue line. And I think with that in mind, they should have a little bit more better defensive unit than they did last year. So in my opinion, better goaltending, a more healthy team, and a more experienced blue line are going to help this Devils team wind up making the playoffs next year. So in my opinion, with all the moves they made, the lots of trades, the few free agents moves that they made, this team improved drastically. So I have to give them probably one of the highest ratings I could give them, and that's A+ for this offseason. They had a fantastic offseason. I know they had to give up a first-round pick in the Markstrom deal. I know they had to trade Holtz. I know they definitely let go of a couple of interesting pieces, but they drafted pretty well. They added some really good pieces in free agency, made some fantastic trades in my opinion, and I think that A+ was warranted for this Devils team. A really great offseason for the New Jersey Devils. So that's my opinion on the New Jersey Devils for this upcoming season. going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So next, going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins, this past year was not another overly great season for them. They finished above 500. They finished close to a playoff spot for the second straight year, but once again, for the second straight year, missed the playoffs. Finished with a record of 38, 32, and 12 for 88 points. 5th in the Metro Division, 10th in the Eastern Conference, 19th in the NHL, so they weren't an overly bad team. Had 255 goals for, which was tied for 18th in the NHL, so a little bit below average, and 251 goals against, which was right at league average. So they weren't an overly bad team, but definitely their special teams wasn't overly great this year, and the offense was a little bit subpar. So interesting stuff there. Their top point scorers from this past year, top one with Sidney Crosby, who had a fantastic season, 94 points. So really good stuff there from Crosby. Malkin was second on the team with 67 points. And then Brian Rust and Erik Karlsson both at 56 points this past year. So not too bad seasons from those two guys. The top goal scorers for his team, Crosby led the way with 42 goals, while Rust had 28 goals and Malkin had 27. So Crosby wound up being the only 30-plus goal scorer for that team, so not overly bad there, but still, you would expect a team like Pittsburgh to have a couple 30-goal scorers. And then you also had the top rookie point player was Valtteri Puustinen. Puustinen had 5 goals, 15 assists, 20 points this year, led the Penguins rookies in goal scoring, so he looked like he had a pretty good season, and looks like he eventually be a solid middle scorer there for the Penguins. So pretty good pickups there for the Penguins. This past season, they missed the playoffs, wasn't overly great for them, and besides Crosby having a fantastic season, this wasn't an overly great season there for the Penguins. Even though they had a winning record, they missed the playoffs. Going over to the additions, losses, movement that they've had this past offseason, so they were able to bring back Valtteri Puustinen, Emil Bemstrom, Samuel Poulin, John Gruden, Jack St. Ivany, Ryan Shea, and Alex Nedeljkovic, who are all either UFAs or RFAs, so interesting pickups there. They also add Anthony Beauvillier in free agency, Blake Lizotte on I think a 2-year deal, Beauvillier was a 1-year deal, Grzelyck was a 1-year deal, they had Sebastian Aho on a 2-year deal, and they had Mac Hollowell on a 1-year deal. So interesting pickups there. I mean, Hollowell, Aho, lower end guys, while Grzelyck, Lizotte, and Beauvillier shall help their NHL team. Meanwhile, they did lose Vinny Hinostroza to Nashville. They did lose Ramsel Horna to the KHL, Jansen Harkins to Anaheim. All of those were really good bottom six forwards this past year. They lose Jack Rathbone at Buffalo. They lose Pierre-Olivier Joseph to St. Louis. That Joseph one's a really bad loss. He was a really good second, third pair defenseman this past year. And they lose Jeff Carter to retirement. So they do lose a couple of interesting pieces this past year in free agency. If you look at their team's trades, they only made 3 trades this year. They traded future considerations to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for picking up Kevin Hayes and the Blues 2025 second round pick. So a pretty good pickup there as they get a cap dump in Kevin Hayes. They then trade Lukas Svechkovsky to the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for Bennett MacArthur, so a decent prospect swap there. And then on free agency day, they move Riley Smith at a $3.75 million cap hit to the New York Rangers in exchange for a 2025 fifth and a 2027 second round pick. So all in all, pretty good trades there for the Penguins. I mean, the Hayes one was a cap dump. The Smith one really helps them get some assets for the future. They make a prospect swap, so not overly bad stuff there for the Penguins. But if you look at the list of UFAs they got, UFAs they lost, and all their trades, they really get a whole bunch better this offseason. You can't really say that. If you look at their top 3 picks in this past year's draft, they took 2 players in the second round, 144th overall, 146th overall. At 44th overall, they took Harrison Brunick, who was a right shot defenseman, should eventually be a solid third, maybe even second pair defenseman. At 46th overall, they took Tanner Howe. He should be a very fantastic player in their top 9 eventually as a solid left winger. And then in the third round, 111th overall, they took Chase Paitila. Paitila was a right shot defenseman once again, should eventually be a solid maybe third pair defenseman there for Pittsburgh Penguins. So some pretty good pickups there in the draft. They didn't have a whole bunch of draft capital, but they did make do with what they had, and I think they definitely did all right. So interesting stuff there. I feel like the 2 biggest questions concerning the Penguins entering training camp. One has to be the Crosby extension. Hasn't gotten done yet. There's a very likely chance that Crosby may wind up walking as a free agent next year. We'll have to wait and see, but there's a lot of speculation that he would sign early in free agency, a 3-year deal with a view of $10 million. We're now near in the middle of August, and that still hasn't happened yet. So there's a lot of question marks in the air now regarding Crosby and will he extend in Pittsburgh, which is going to be interesting to note there. So it's an interesting situation we're going to have to keep our eye on. On top of that, will the goaltending hold this year? Last year, goaltending was all right. alright, but not overly fantastic. And the Penguins definitely did not have overly great goaltending. Nedeljkovic took the starting role from Jerry, so I think there's a very likely chance that this team needs a goaltending to hold if they're going to have any shot trying to make a playoff run this year. So in my opinion, those are two biggest questions for the Penguins entering your training camp. Will Crosby sign an extension? And on top of that, will the goaltending hold for the Penguins? So interesting stuff there. Next, going over to my projected lineup as well as my predictions for the Penguins for this upcoming season. If I go to my projected lineup, I have Michael Bunting starting on the top units with Sidney Crosby and Brian Rust. I have Rickard Rakell playing on line 2 with Evgeny Malkin and Valtteri Puustinen. Line 3 is Kevin Hayes centering Drew O'Connor and Anthony Beauvillier. Line 4 is Noel Acciari with Blake Lizotte and Matt Nieto. On the defensive end, I have Marcus Peterson playing with Chris Letang. I have Ryan Graves playing with Erik Karlsson, and I have Matt Grzelcyk playing with rookie Owen Pickering. In net, I have Jari and Nedeljkovic, and the spares are Emil Bemstrom, Lars Eller, and Sebastian Aho. So that's my projected lineup for the Penguins for this upcoming season. If I go my predictions for this upcoming season for the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's not overly great. At this point, I have them missing out on the playoffs by just a couple of points. I don't have them missing out by too much again. Once again, I have them missing out by less than 10 points. But I do have them hitting 87 points this year, which was only 1 point lower than last year. I have them sort of being another really decent season. Another one where they probably have a winning record. But one where I don't really believe they're going to have enough firepower to make it past the playoffs. Like, you have a lot of young upstart teams like Jersey, Ottawa, Buffalo competing for playoffs this year. You still have a lot of really good teams like Toronto, Florida, Boston, Carolina, Rangers, who are still going to try and make the playoffs. So there's a lot of interesting pieces there, and I'm not sure if the Penguins have what it takes to leapfrog all of those teams. So I have them finishing right now with 87 points, and I have them missing out on the playoffs just barely at this point. And I have them finishing 6th in the Metro Division, so I had them finishing a little bit lower. So interesting stuff there. If they look at the 3 ways this team can improve to get better for next year, one needs to be better depth scoring. Their depth scoring was not overly great this year, and probably one of the main reasons why they were on the lower end of average for goal scoring this year. So if they can get some better depth scoring, they have a very much more likelihood of making the playoffs this upcoming season. Better goaltending. They need some more better goaltending. Jari and Nedeljkovic weren't overly bad last year, but Jari definitely didn't have his best season. So I definitely think if they can put up some better numbers, there's a very likely chance the Penguins could make a strong case to make the playoffs this upcoming season. And I think they need a better power play. The power play after Karlsson came over was absolutely atrocious last year, definitely to start with. So I think if they're able to have a little bit more of a consistent power play unit, this Penguins team should be a lot more scary to play against. So in my opinion, if they are to make the playoffs, they need better depth scoring, they need better goaltending, and they need better power play units. So in my opinion, that's what I think for the Penguins and how they can improve this upcoming season. And lastly, looking at their team, they made some interesting moves, adding Kevin Hayes, moving on from Riley Smith, adding some more draft capital, wind up moving on from guys like Nostroza, Joseph, Carter, Harkins, guys like Beauvillier, Grzelyck, Lizotte. So in my opinion, they did alright, but did they really get a whole bunch better? I can't really say that. So in my opinion, I'm giving them a C+. Definitely, I think they got a tiny bit better. I think the addition of Grzelyck will definitely be a little bit improvement on a guy like Joseph. I think adding guys like Hayes, Beauvillier, Lizotte should add some more help on the bottom 6, but I do lose a guy like Riley Smith, who was a solid top 6 forward last year. So in my opinion, I think they get a little bit better, but I don't think they got a whole bunch better. So that's my opinion on the Pittsburgh Penguins at this point in time. So definitely, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What do you think about all this? Do you think the Devils and the Penguins, what do you think about what I talked about here? What do you think about their seasons this past year? What do you think about their off seasons? What do you agree with? What do you like? What do you do not like? What do you think about their biggest questions entering the training camp? What do you think about my projected lineup plus my projections for this upcoming season? What do you think about the 3 ways I can see these teams improve this upcoming season? And what do you think about my ratings? Definitely let your guys' thoughts on these 2 teams down in the comment section below. So that's what I'm talking about for today or inside this video. If you'd like to subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't leave a comment down in the comment section below. So this can all discuss in this video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. Leave a link down in the description below. And continue guys all for next video. See you guys soon.